Hello and welcome to this episode of Pause with Nandini on NRI Affairs. Today I have an unusual guest. We've had poets and writers and social activists and entrepreneurs. Today I have a financial whiz. Please join me in welcoming Hansi Mehrotra to Pause with Nandini. She's quite a financial guru and she's with there. And for someone who's not well versed in that field, it's really hard to figure out what advice makes sense, what to pick, how to build wealth and assets, and how to sort of have a secure life where perhaps you can pursue other creative things rather than just think about how to make money. So, Hansi, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. Thanks, Nandini, for inviting me. Look forward to the chat.
Absolutely. We'll begin with a little bit of background. So if you'd like to tell us how you started out, what your background is, and what makes you an expert in the financial field.
So you started with saying that you usually have poets and artists. And the funny thing is that technically I am qualified in literature, so that makes me a poet. And I did do fine arts back in year 12, and I thought I could become an artist, but then realized that you can't really make a living out of it. Even more so back then. I mean, now you might be able to, but back then, certainly not. And then the idea was to become a neuroscientist. So I thought maybe neurosurgeon, but then scientist. The idea was that I wanted to look into people's brains because that was the most fascinating part. And then as life turns out, I had to leave studying for medicine, science, and then I chose finance. Most people fall into finance, but I chose finance at that time just because it was fascinating. But now I think life has become a full sort of circle in that, interestingly, I've discovered that finance is less about numbers and more about psychology. So actually, I am still studying the human brain, human psychology. And therefore, it's more an art or a social science rather than a hard science. And that's okay. I quite enjoy it. And twice I've tried to leave the finance world, once to become an actor, in fact. And a second time, just this midlife crisis that I'm going through. And both times I've willingly come back into finance because I think it is fascinating. There's a saying that if you want to understand a person, show me how they spend their money. Okay, so literally how they spend their money, or not how they earn, but how they spend their money. So I have come back into finance. And how I did that is after doing my degree in literature economics from Delhi University, which I did by correspondence, by the way. I then left India and went to Australia. And I did a postgrad diploma in applied finance and investments. And then another qualification called the Chartered Financial Analyst, CFA, which at that time, I think today even is considered one of the hardest sort of financial exams. So twice I've gone through these postgrad qualifications. And then I also did a sort of a private wealth certificate at Wharton, just to see whether I could hold my own with Wharton professors. And the answer is I could. And I was able to lecture in their campus in Singapore. So yeah, so I built a career over the last 30 years in finance. But just so so finance, unlike medicine and perhaps law, the qualifications are not standardized around the world. So some people will say they did an MBA in finance and they've done corporate finance. That's not the same thing as investing. Some other people will say something else. So basically, as there is definitely a variety. The CFA is considered one of the best for investments, which is what I do. So that's what I've done.
Super. I find it interesting how you said that it's the psychology of money. Interesting enough, in some of our other, in the spiritual sort of space, there's so many courses now being offered in terms of healing your relationship with money. And I do believe that in some ways, perhaps people have all sorts of ideas about money that are quite conditioned. And sometimes those impressions are formed early on in your life. and they continue to dictate the way you live your life in every aspect. Again, what you said, what you spend on and what you don't. So I think I kind of understand what you mean, that it's not just about numbers, but it's about people. It's about people and the way they think. Um, One of the things I wanted to jump right into is that while women are so much more into careers and into building their own wealth and building their financial stability, I find that it can be quite challenging to find the right information, and or more so from a woman who's actually gained financial freedom for herself through intelligent choices. So I was just thinking if we could talk a little bit about, at every stage of a career or a woman's life, what would be some of the key things to think about and to kind of keep in mind towards gaining that sort of financial freedom? So, for instance, someone starting out in their career, would you recommend, for instance, that they start building assets early, invest in a home? Or would you think that it's a better use of their money to perhaps build qualifications or build, something of themselves that is going to be useful for life? So just your take on that.
Okay, so before I jump in to answer, let me just explain why the focus on women, and also my own sort of experience, if you will. So when I started out my career, I wasn't really like, I need to build a career. I mean, of course, I need to do something. I always thought at some point I'll make money through a business. So I always had this idea that I don't want to work for somebody else. But as life turns out, I did end up holding two jobs, and both were in investment research and consulting. So the first one, 10 years, was in research, and the next 10 years were in consulting. And during that time, I got married, wanted to have kids, just like anybody else. And I thought that I could pull off both. Okay, not having a career, but having sort of an income, my own income, and having sort of kids. But I think more than the logistical issue, there was a mindset issue that I had to overcome, which is basically trying to convince my husband to hold the fort when I would take time off and do that. And he kind of agreed, but then we made some poor investment decisions. And I'm going to say this, I am not one of those finfluencers who started life as a waitress and then kind of lost all their money and then became an investment. Ironically, that's exactly what happened. I did start as a waitress. I did lose my money, but while I was still qualified as a financial expert. So it's not like a lot of influencers are not financially qualified. I'm saying to you that I had a full-time job advising pension funds and private banks on billions of dollars. And
Wow.
yet I made the same mistakes that a lot of other people do, which is that I decided that we're going to sort of invest in what my husband, who also was in the investment field, that we invested in a very concentrated portfolio of assets, which, because he had done the research, I was confident that some really intelligent person had done it. But that doesn't mean they can't make mistakes. That doesn't mean that we can foresee every risk there is. And sure enough, sort of a bunch of things happened, climate being one of them, because we had invested in agriculture. And then 2008, a bunch of things happened together, which meant that we did lose a lot of money. And that did put a strain on our relationship. Because we couldn't have the kids like we planned. So what I'm saying is that money is not a separate thing. And it's not just about the logistics. It's also about sort of taking your family along to some of the decisions you make. So if you choose to have kids or not have kids, whether you have family support or not is a very big thing. Now, having said that, I did do sort of 20 plus years in research and consulting. And then post 2008, I started questioning my own industry. I thought it was bloated and they were selling products that nobody needed. And so I started questioning that and slowly went into financial education. Tried to convince my company to do it. And eventually I quit my midlife crisis and moved to India and started financial education. And while I think the education is as applicable to men and women, interestingly, men don't ask for education. They think they know everything, and women always do ask for a thing because they're not confident. So I would say that there's a bunch of differences that are between men and women. Physically, obviously, one, there is a thing called gender pay gap. Even before we choose to have kids, even in the first few years of our working career, before we've even thought about kids, the gender pay gap opens up. So there's something in the way we negotiate or don't negotiate means that we don't get paid as well as the men. So that's one issue. Then, of course, we take time off. And in that time, depending on which country you're working, you may have a job guaranteed, but you lose out those years of experience. So then we do fall behind. And then there is a glass ceiling, whether people talk about it or not talk about it, there is one. We don't get as many opportunities, and then there's a limit, which is why in many professions, there's a huge number of women entering, but they don't make it all the way to the top. And then there's these softer issues, and then also we live longer. So yes, we tend to marry older men, so they will probably die before us. But even accounting for that, we have longer lifespans. So we start late, we don't accumulate as much, we don't invest as well, and we live longer, which means we need the money more. So we have a bunch of issues. Now, I said we don't invest as well, and that's a psychological issue. Like I said, men jump in and say, like when I meet men at parties, even when I've told them I work in finance and they might be in a very different field, they will jump in and tell me, oh, the market is doing this. Women, on the other hand, even if they know as much, they will say, I don't have a head for numbers. Can you tell me what to do? So therein lies the problem. And until recently, people thought that's because women are more risk averse. There's something about our risk tolerance that we just don't take risks. More recent research says that it's not that. It's just that we perceive risk differently. We're able to see more risks. We respond to the same risks, but it's just that we see more of it. Men just don't see it. So that's more the issue. And there will be, I'm sure, much more research done in terms of how to counteract it. In my experience, I feel like it's more a confidence issue. So, and hence, my whole library of financial education, most of it is equally applicable to men and women, but some of it I target women just to boost their confidence, just so that they can see another woman with all the same issues that you have faced, I have faced. And I also invite a bunch of my guests who did have kids and did have to juggle and did have all of those issues. So the idea is to showcase, look, here's some women who went through the same issues as you did, but were still able to accumulate all of these things or invest better and so on. So that's kind of the background with which I create this content on my channel. Now, coming back to your original question about, okay, what should women do? Well, one is to be aware of these issues. Okay, so be aware that we have these gaps and therefore we need to invest wiser and more, not less. Okay, you will have to counteract some unsolicited advice from the men in your lives who will say, we know better, sweetheart, and we will take care of it and all that stuff. I would say that with respect, you say, thank you, but can I also be involved, if not completely take over my own finances? So at least
I have Hansi on my side.
Yeah, exactly. So certainly with my help or with anybody's help, make sure that you definitely be involved. Don't just sign, okay? Which is what most women are told, like, we will buy this house in your name, or we will buy this mutual fund, or we will buy this thing, whatever, you just sign here. So don't fall for just sign here, okay? So make sure you read and ask questions and be involved. I would certainly recommend having assets in your own name as well. I know women from times immemorial have been sort of buying gold jewelry, which becomes Sri Dhan in India, which becomes legally theirs. But I think that's not enough. It's just nowhere near enough. So you need to have a bank account, you need to have assets, you need to build your own investment portfolio and so on. So that would be my second. And therefore, again, this video series that I have made and I'm about to restart will help you towards that. And there's plenty of people.
Sorry to interrupt, but just tell us a little bit about what content is out there and where people can find it, and also what's coming, and then we'll continue.
Sure. Okay, so basically 2015, 2016, I think, I put up a channel on YouTube called The Money Hunts, Hans, stands for Hansi. So the Money Hunts is like the money swan, which is what Hansi means in, and the finance people will get the pun because there's a concept called the black swan in finance. So the idea was the money hunts is like the money swan. So basically that's a channel. In fact, you mentioned my LinkedIn accomplishments. They were basically because I had started writing in 2015. And then 2016, I made a comedy series, a web series using humor to educate about finance. So that library, half of it I re-uploaded because that company who I collaborated with, they shut down. News Corp pulled out of India, but those videos are still on my channel under the Money Hunts. So there's a bunch of playlists under it, and this particular one is called Money Talks with Hansi. So where I took a sort of a funny take on it, and then there is quite a few more videos and so different playlists. There's one called the Practical series, the Money Hunts, and then there's I think Ask Hansi, where I made 1-minute answers to frequently asked questions. Lovely. And then the other one series called the Fast Finance series, where I took investment as a subset of personal finance. And I tried to explain jargon, just sort of a 1-minute answer to the most commonly used terms in finance. So there's a few different types of content on my channel. YouTube hasn't been something that I've targeted. It's more a repository. So it's actually on LinkedIn that I put my videos out, but YouTube has a library neatly organized under playlists. So during COVID, I stopped because the rise of influencers meant that a whole bunch of kids and non-kids who are not finance experts started holding themselves out to be experts with no finance qualification, with no experience, and saying things that were questionable. And it was. In fact, most regulators around the world have now started acting against them, but the damage has been done. The last 3 years, they sort of recommended all kinds of things like crypto and pump and dump schemes and all kinds of things. So my point was, because there were so many of them doing that, I stopped. So the last 3 years, I actually stopped. But recently, I've collaborated with an NGO, and basically I'm about to restart that series. It will be on their playlist, but then I will link from mine. So if you follow the Money Hunts, you'll definitely get all of that content.
Brilliant.
That is coming out. So what we do, what I try to do is between 1 minute, most videos are 5 minutes, and the new ones will be 10 minutes. But the idea is within that time period, I pick up a topic and I try to explain that.
Sure.
I mean, because it's video, you can stop and pause and watch it. It's not the same as this relaxed chat that we are having. So it's not that I don't have that much time to sort of pursue, but I also do a lot of live webinars. And they will be sort of announced from time to time as well. So the idea is that after you watch the videos, if you want to come along to a live webinar and ask questions, or on the video itself, if you have a question, I have always answered every single question that has been put on the videos. So all of that is available, and I have nothing to sell. I have nothing to sell. And I don't hold a license. I don't own any assets for this reason, so that no one ever accuses me of any conflict of interest. Sure. Or perceived conflict of interest. So yeah.
It's brilliant that there's so much out there that you've already done. And I'm so happy to bring this content and, expose this to newer audiences through the show. One of the things, of course, you said that build assets. What advice would you have then for women perhaps preparing for retirement or thinking of retirement? What are the things that you would think you need to sort of be cognizant of?
I think retirement is a while away. I think the bigger issue that women will face is during their lives. So things happen, and things won't happen just to other people. They can happen to you. So I think you just need to be prepared and have assets in your name for all the things that can happen in between. And then there's retirement. I think it's fashionable to say early retirement. And yes, I did quit my job just before I turned 40. But that's just to with a base level retirement sort of income. In that, my assets provide me with the dal chawal in a way, and a roof over my head and basic clothes. If you want to continue to enjoy life, travel and all of that stuff, then you have to continue working. So my first advice would be pick a career or a line or a business or whatever you want to call it. Pick something that you enjoy doing. Firstly, okay, so don't. I feel if you take the highest paying job, you will have burnout and you will not enjoy it, and you will probably quit at the first sign. And if you chop and change your career a few times, and it's. Having said that, I call myself multi-talented. I think Marie Forleo said it on some video. In that, I could never decide what to do, so I want to do multiple things, and it's quite okay to have 2-3 careers over your lifetime. Just knowing that you will have to sort of start again. So firstly, choose your career or line very carefully, and make sure, because that all said and done, investments will come later. Your primary source of income and therefore wealth will be your career. So choose that wisely. Okay, so only if you earn 100 rupees or $100 and you spend 50, 60, 70, whatever, and have 20, 30, 40 savings, only then can you actually build, right? So first thing is invest in yourself. Okay, so that's the other thing. In today's world, you have to retrain every 5 to 10 years. So make sure that you can't say, oh, I did one undergrad or one postgrad, and then that will last me for the rest of your life. It won't. So whether you choose to do it through MOOCs, but the problem is they're free to consume, but you still, to get a certificate, you have to pay. So you have to reinvest in your line all the time. I do. In the early part of my career, before the advent of MOOCs, I did do these 2 postgrad courses. So I saved money, went and did that, and that's what got me the better job. Today, I think you can do them for free. Everything is available for free on the internet. But then your challenge is, how do you showcase it to your future client or employer? Okay, so you have to find creative ways of doing that. It can be done. What I've done, again, with LinkedIn is I've given opportunity to a whole bunch of interns. I've done it myself, and I'm giving them the opportunity to showcase their work. So it can be done, is the short answer. My point, though, is that you have to invest time and money into educating yourself every 5 years or so.
Yeah.
Then you need to save, and then you need to invest that saving. And that will come in buckets. Okay, so you need the kind of emergency bucket, which you need to basically keep in cash. Savings account or FD is fine. Then you need to have this kind of sort of time horizon of 5 to 7 years that you might need it for something. So you needed something relatively liquid, or can be liquidated within sort of a short period. And then you can have long-term assets for your retirement. So what I'm saying is that retirement is not the only goal. There's a whole bunch of things that you need to plan for. And so you need to match your assets and liabilities. So your liabilities are what you're going to spend on. And if you have an idea what you want to do, then you need to plan your assets accordingly. So for example, Julia Roberts in that Eat, Pray, Love, right? When she says, I want to go and just take a holiday. I'm going to Italy or go to India. That's a valid outcome. Okay, you might not get to old age if you don't nurture your soul in between. So what I'm saying is, don't just aim for retirement. Aim for everything in between. So make sure you spread your assets into a sort of a variety of different types. And to get started, mutual funds are the best sort of financial product anywhere in the world, because, and this invention was only less than 100 years old. After the ATM, they say that's the only useful invention in finance, is the fact that you can pool your assets with other people and get a professional fund manager to manage it. Now, whether you go active or passive, I mean, that's another deep dive we should do. But what I'm saying is, as to build assets with small amounts, start with first FDs, and then mutual funds. And then we can talk about what kind of mutual funds for what sort of goals and things like that. And that's all what I've covered in the videos as well.
Beautiful. Yes, I think one thing is, of course, the big picture. And then again, you go granular and you try to really break it down and understand all of these components a little bit better. So much of what you said actually resonated. The signing without reading, this trust in, all right, other people probably know this better. And I don't know if that's a mix of conditioning, of convenience, of confidence. And I think it's something really to think about, and perhaps younger women now come with more confidence and come with a little bit more awareness. I don't know, but I think what you're saying is useful for people to hear in general, especially those who say, oh, I'm no good at numbers and I'm no good at finance. Speaking of that, what do you think in your long career and having dealt with so many people who come to you with questions, what are some of the limiting beliefs that people hold about money?
So earlier you said something about money is perhaps a function of what you experience in childhood. It's not perhaps, it is. Money, I mean, your beliefs are basically, they are generation specific. So people who have lived through the Great Depression are stingy with money. Even if you see our parents, they in their 70s and 80s, they came, so whatever generation you came of age, so between age 18 to 21, that's influence. So I mean, you and I are, I think I'm a bit older than you, but I grew up in the 80s in India. And yeah, not having a phone or not having, so I still hold all my plastic bags, for example. Okay, I just hold them. Okay, there's no way I'm paying for gold bags.
That's just a desi thing.
It's a desi thing, but it's also a scarcity mindset.
Yeah,
okay,
sure. No, I understand that.
So it's what I'm saying is you're a function of your generation,
Sure.
and then you're a function of your family situation. Then you're a function of what your parents taught you. So situation is one thing, but different families with the same situation may have very different attitudes.
Sure.
Some people have this thing of, it's only money. We can make some more, like have that ice cream or have that whatever. And then there are other people who are like, no, we have to save every single penny, whatever. So you are a product of all these influences. There is some genetic component as well in terms of your risk behavior, although there isn't that much proof that affects your investment or sort of financial sort of risk taking. But there is a bunch of these factors. So what you need to be, firstly, is you need to be aware of it. Any good therapist will tell you the problem, you can't fix a problem until you're aware of it. So just be aware of how you spend. Is it as soon as it comes in, you spend it? You spend it even before it comes in. So for example, credit card debt. I've never had credit card debt carried from one month to another month. I just don't know how to do it. I just don't know how to spend more than I earn. Yet there are people in my family and same genetic material, same background, same whatever. They have carried credit card debt, which has led them into trouble. So same background, different outcome. So I'm saying to you that you have to be aware on that, and then you have to sort of fix it. Limiting beliefs. So this is one. Money doesn't stay with me. Okay, I just don't know how to deal with it. I don't have a head for numbers. All of these technically are limiting beliefs. And like I said, I see that men and women know exactly the same thing, and yet women tend to always say I'm not confident and men are. But even, I mean, just leaving gender stereotypes aside, I think people just have all kinds of, for example, in your fraternity, in fact, we have a common friend, and he's like, oh, I'm an artist and I don't believe in money. And even when getting a gift, he would be like feeling guilty. Okay, so there's a lot of guilt that artists have about, or, these capitalists are bad and we are making this art against it. I mean, if you have that attitude, you're not going to accumulate assets. Okay, capitalism is not bad. It's broken. It's broken. I admit that. I'm saying that 2008 was an example of it. In fact, this morning's news about UBS bailing out Credit Suisse in Switzerland. Swiss banks are meant to be safe. and here's one bank being bailed out. So I'm just saying to you that it is what it is. Okay, you yourself are not going to change the how politics is going to work. It is what it is. So you have to make peace with the fact this is the way it is. Now, how can I function within this without saying this is bad, that is bad? Nothing, money is not bad in itself. It's a tool. It's just a tool. So if you kind of approach it with that mindset, you can do something about sort of, and what is money? Money is basically, to me, it's like a battery. Okay. When you are young, the first 20 years, your parents take care of you. Okay, fine. From age 20 to age 60, roughly, give or take 5-10 years, you have earning capacity and you can earn excess of what you spend. You have that capacity. You should conserve that by earning more. So you earn your 100 rupees, save the 20, 30, 40, whatever, turn it into money, and then turn money into assets. And then when you are retired, you convert that battery power back into goods and services. So money is just a way to store sort of value. When you have excess energy, you put it in. And when you don't have excess energy, you pull it out. That's all it is. So don't look at it as if it's such a bad thing. So that's one. Then you obviously have to have some idea of what the different asset classes are. So what types of assets you can put into. And these are things that are not, so the limiting belief is it's all too hard and boring. No, it's not. It's actually fascinating. It's absolutely fascinating. Watch my videos. Okay, come to my webinar and I would make it fascinating. But at some point you have to say, remember, if you have had kids, sometimes kids will get bored. They will want chocolate or they will not want to do their homework. You made them do it, right? Similarly, you are being child by saying, oh, no, it's boring, I will not do it, or this. No, I am being the teacher, I'm being the mother and saying, no, you must understand some of this, okay? Life doesn't function without it. You have to understand basics. And if you do, I promise you, people, you can make money. It's not been that, I mean, okay, I shouldn't trivialize it. I think for some people, it will be hard in spite of that. Okay, so fact is money attracts more money. Your education will lead you to earn more money. And that will again, so I'm saying for some people, it will always be a struggle, but certainly you can do things to sort of make it better. So, yeah.
You inspire a lot of trust, I have to say. I already feel like you could solve a lot of problems for a lot of people. Right. One of the other things I wanted to talk to you, you did mention crypto briefly. Excuse me. What are some of the opportunities today that perhaps not everybody's aware of, or new and emerging opportunities that you think hold promise?
Crypto is not one of them.
Right.
I should say. So
will you qualify that a little bit? Will you tell us a little bit more about why you think so?
So firstly, I would say that it's very hard to invent new asset classes. Okay, it's what we are doing. So firstly, so in the way I explain it is in financial assets, there's only two ways you can invest in a business. Okay, you can either lend money to a business, which is called debt, or you can take a stake in the business, which is called equity. And these two combined are financial assets because you're investing in a business. Okay, so whether it's Apple or whether it's Infosys or whether it's whatever, you're investing in a business, or whether it's a sandwich shop around the corner. Again, you can either lend money or you can take a stake. That's a financial asset. And then there are two real assets, which is real estate, so buildings or land. And then there's commodities, which is all the things that you take out of the ground. So whether it's agricultural or whether it's metals, gold, silver, whatever. Okay, so they're the four asset classes. Everything that you see around you tends to be a subset of those four. Mm-hmm. Okay, so if you say infrastructure, it's kind of a type of real estate. Or you see, throw anything at me, and it's most likely to be one of those four things. Then more recently, human talent would be considered
I was coming
possibly.
to that. What would you
So
say about human capital, human talent?
I think that would be definitely considered a new asset class. And how you do it is still evolving. So as I think back in the 80s, I think David Bowie issued some bonds. And then more recently, there are some other sort of things, but it's not become mainstream yet. Okay, it's most talent tends to monetize it by turning it into IP, into intellectual property, and then selling a stake in that. So usually through a company structure, which is basically a financial asset. So what I'm saying is they are using two sets of financialization to turn their talent into some sort of income stream. So the finance world does have some uses to do that. So what I'm saying is, so that's one way. Crypto was an idea, almost a rebellion against the capitalist system. Actually, it was for a part of the capitalist system, which was payments. Why is it that when I'm paying, say I'm transferring money from me to you, it was going via the banks and they were taking a cut. And cross-border, this was like criminal, I wouldn't say criminal, but the highway robbery in terms of the numbers that you would lose, right? So crypto sort of came out of that whole thinking that there are too many middlemen, finance has become too big, and let's start taking out some middlemen and sort of making it a payment system. Out of that payment system, so that's why it was called cryptocurrency. It started as Bitcoin, right? So it was coin made out of bits. So bits and atoms are considered jargon for atom is a matter and bit is a software. So basically they were able to do this whole thing through software. That's how it came about. It's kind of grown into this, from this currency or payment system into crypto assets. Okay. And then now people want to use it as a store of value, like what they do with currency. The thing with currency, it tends to be stable because central governments can control it. Or not governments, but central banks, which in some countries would be influenced by central governments. But the idea is that central banks can print money and therefore they can control it. With cryptocurrency, it's proven not to be as stable. So it doesn't actually fulfill one of the very definitions of currency. You have to have currency stable before you can price something with it, right? The whole point of a currency, if I want to price a loaf of bread, it can't be one day the loaf of bread is $2, another day it's $10, another day it's like 10 cents. Okay, that would be too volatile day to day, right? So one of the functions of currency is a stable sort of measure. So it doesn't fulfill, Bitcoin doesn't fulfill, Bitcoin, and I say Bitcoin, and now I'm sort of starting to sort of broaden it out. There have been many attempts. I can't say I'm an expert in that. I know this, that for it to become mainstream, for people like me to adopt it, I'm a taxpayer. I'm a good citizen. I want to pay my taxes. I don't believe that everything the government or finance does is bad. So therefore, I want to, whatever I sort of invest in or through has to be legal and has to make sense. For me, it has not made sense. I am, like I said, governments around the world want to sort of ban it. Goes to show that they don't, because they won't be able to control the interest rates. They won't be able to tax you in it. Okay, so there's a whole bunch of issues with it becoming mainstream. If it is not going to be mainstream, then it's always going to be a fringe asset. For that reason, I don't think it's something, if you don't understand finance, if you don't understand the basic asset classes, you should not dip your toe into crypto. Okay, so if you first understand the finance world, and then you go and experiment. Yeah, it's always, even if you experiment, it'll only be like maximum 5% of your portfolio, of your assets. Okay, so I'm just saying, why put so much time and energy into something that will be a small part of your assets? The bulk of what you will earn will be through your labor, and the bulk of what you will invest in, even all these crypto enthusiasts, after all that drama that they do, they want to convert it back into dollars or back into rupees and buy real estate with it. So after all that, you're coming back to our system only, the main system, right? So I just think that there are definitely takeaways in terms of the blockchain technology that has come out of it, that is of use. And I think in our generation, we will see that being developed, use cases being developed. But today, it's just a very expensive way of doing a database. Okay, so therefore, I have not put my mind and effort into sort of investing in it or sort of writing about it, because I think there's enough people out there doing it, and I can't add any more to it. I know this, I have not put my money into it.
Fair enough. So if not all of this, what would you think then is sort of promising for the future? A lot of people talk about, obviously green energy, they talk about all the green solutions, especially in Australia, that's a big focus. Do you think that's where people are going to make money in the future?
People are going to make, okay, so understand this about making money. Making money through your labor is one thing. Making money through investments requires two things. One is the underlying business or the way that cash flow is produced. You have to understand that. Okay, so that's the underlying story or the business. And then there's a thing called valuation. Okay, what you pay for it. So if you want to buy even a restaurant or a sandwich shop, you might say, okay, the business is earning this much, whatever. At some point, however, or even if you forget that, everyone understands real estate. Okay, you want to buy a rental property. Okay, so you do say, how much can I rent it for? Do you not?
Sure.
So what you pay for it becomes a function of how much you can rent it out for.
Right.
Yeah. It like that, every asset is like that. Okay, so whether it's clean tech or whether it's an old-fashioned rental property, you have to say what will be the cash flow from it, and then what am I paying to acquire that cash flow. So when something is really sexy, the valuations go too high. So when you go to a very fancy suburb that everyone now knows there's a highway being built or there's a school coming up or whatever, if you know about it, then everyone bids the price up. So that the rental flow that you get won't be. So what I'm saying is you have to understand the underlying business. So clean tech may be very promising, but today, how you get access to it could be via venture capital, could be via listed shares, could be via whatever. If both those require you to value, so you're buying a share and that share comes at a certain valuation. So finance is about, in fact, inherently, there's no such thing as a bad investment. Inherently, nothing is bad. It's just how much you pay for it. So I feel people need to, and even 20 years ago, I actually have a newspaper article from an Australian newspaper, which had the headline with me saying exactly the same thing. So it's funny, 20 years I'm saying the same thing. You need to know what you're paying for a certain thing, whether it's your house, whether it's a rental property, whether it's anything. And intuitively, you know this. Intuitively, you know, if someone says, here's a really nice, I don't know, pick something, pick a handbag. Okay, a handbag could be 1,000 rupees. It could be $1,000. It could be $30,000. And you know, intuitively, there's only so much value you can get out of it, right? So
yes,
this understanding how much value you get out of it versus how much you pay for it. This is the crux of finance. This is the crux of investing. If you understand intuitively that they're two different things, you need to be aware of both, and they need to match, most importantly. And then you are fine. So coming back to making money, I think people shouldn't, I know it's human nature to want to find that sexy news story, but most of your money will be made from your boring assets, which have been around for the longest time. And that's how it should be. Money should be boring. Okay, not learning about it, but once you've learned about it, money should not, investing and your portfolio should not take up more than maybe 1 hour a month. Okay, once you've put your things in place, 1 hour a month, just sit down, take a quick look at what things are, where things are at, and that's it. You shouldn't have to read the newspapers. You shouldn't have to read the financial newspapers. You shouldn't have to go and meet your advisor. You shouldn't have to go and look up your statements any more than, like I said, 1 hour a month, if that.
So this really solid, stable foundation that you build, that sort of works for itself rather than being this really adventurous sort of seeker of the new thrill, that's not really the way that you recommend. No, that makes sense. That does make sense. One of the things that we spoke about before was that now, obviously, there is so much information, as you said. There are influencers and there are books, and there's almost too much information out there. And then for someone who's not well versed, how do you choose and how do you decide which is the path for you?
Okay. It's not almost too much. There is too much, and it's only going to get worse. Okay. So there is definitely too much information. In one of my videos, I said this, and I'm going to say this again. Imagine if you went to school and the teacher just threw information at you, okay, randomly. One day they give you some physics fact about how a pressure system works. Another day they gave you some biology fact or some, just randomly, okay? And then 3 years later, they're teaching you ABCD. Would you have survived? Would you have made sense? Of course not. So I think people who didn't get taught finance in school, which is most of us, think that somehow reading a newspaper or watching a video, somehow they are going to understand something that is here when they don't know what ABCD is. Okay, it does not make sense. So I would say, please take the time to learn the ABCDs. Have a framework. You can borrow mine, and then you can start putting information in. Frameworks are like how teachers set syllabuses. Yes, some syllabus mine might differ from somebody else's, but the first thing is who made them a teacher. So you should check qualifications. Please check my qualification, but also please check everybody else's qualifications before you start trusting them. So that's one.
That's fine, yes.
I told you CFA is definitely a good one. It's not enough, but it's at least it's a hygiene. MBA finance is not good enough. Okay, they only learn corporate finance. That's not the same as investing. So I'm saying to you that there are certain minimum qualifications that everyone who's supposedly giving advice, you should look for. That's one. Then you should look for understanding how that person is making money. So understand their business model. Okay, if it seems they're giving you free advice, then the product is you. Right? Just like any other advertising driven thing.
Sure.
So either they're selling you information or they're getting you to follow them, whatever. The point is they're monetizing you following them. So you understand how they make money, and please ask them. Feel free to ask them how they make money. And then, like I said, if you have understood the basics of ABCD, so there's a few libraries or few people who are well-intentioned. So Khan Academy, for example, yes. Which is what they do for physics and math. They did try finance as well. Certainly my library will, like I said, I'm teaming up with this NGO, and our ambition is to make a Khan Academy type library on finance. And we are not charging the ads. Unfortunately, Google put the ads into YouTube, which can't be stopped. But we are not making money. We're happy to put it in writing and saying we are not taking any money out of this. So certainly that would give you, but you can verify that. So if you find 3 different places that say ABCDs like this, then chances are it should be okay. ABCDs like this. So find 2, 3 well-respected sort of sources and get the ABCD. Once you get that, then, and like I said, ABCD is facts. Then there's frameworks where teachers may explain things differently. And then there's opinions. Today, you might not even understand what an opinion is. Today, some charismatic person gets up on TV and says the market is going to fall. That's his or her opinion. Okay, that doesn't mean it's going to happen. So you need to learn to decipher what an opinion is versus what a framework is and what is a fact. So I'd say there is no shortcut to that. And I think health and wealth are 2 things that are so important to your being that I don't think you should take shortcuts. I think if you invest a few hours, I want to say maybe 20 hours upfront, okay, it will literally benefit you for the rest of your life. Then you shouldn't have to look at it, but understand the ABCDs to start with. Understand what are asset classes, what are products, how they make money, all of that. And then everything else will be easy. Make
I
sense?
love it. Yes, it does. It does actually make sense because I think going back to fundamentals sometimes is a reality check because now everything is like quick bites, 5 ways, 20 seconds. Everything is like that. And I don't know how much, knowledge and wisdom can actually come to us that way. So thank you for that. I did have a question about people wanting to get off the hamster wheel and choosing an alternate life path. It's terribly inspiring to see couples leave everything and go live in, I don't know, a hill station somewhere, start farming and have the most beautiful morning surrounded by wildlife. But, how realistic is that? I know a lot of people today feel a certain disenchantment with this entire sort of social, economic, even political sort of world that we live in and that we have inherited. And somewhere there is this feeling of wanting out, right? And it's interesting to talk to a pragmatic person like you to see what are your thoughts on that?
So firstly, I think if you think that you are in a hamster wheel, I think you chose your profession not well. Okay, so
Mm,
firstly, you should be doing what you love doing. Okay, if you feel, if you feel like in a hamster wheel, then there's something wrong with what you're doing. So, having said that, it's not realistic for everyone to follow their passion. My passion may be acting, and I might be terrible at it. So I mean, yeah, I can't just go and sleep on benches and wait till my break happens. So I totally understand that. Therefore, you choose the second best. And I did that. I mean, I said I've done it a couple of times. But all said and done, whatever I've settled in is what I like doing. Okay.
mhm.
Somewhere it's like arranged marriages as well. Sometimes they say you fall in love with a husband after you get married, right? Somewhere you have to like what you do or like what you have, your lot in life. Okay. So I would say that as a starting point. I think if you constantly feel you're in a hamster wheel, please look at that first.
Mm,
Two, I think most issues I've seen people who are in hamster wheels are they care about what other people think of them. And therefore, they go into this lifestyle expansion. It's the lifestyle inflation where they have committed to having a big house and a big car and kids in private schools and whatever. And because they've once shown it to their family and friends and neighbors and all that stuff, they now can't get out of it. Okay, that's
yeah.
much harder to get off that once you've committed to it. As luck would have it, or for whatever reason, and maybe because I saw my parents going through the trauma, from the very beginning, I never had very big ambitions. I never had, I want to have a big house. I, I spent my college years, I did not going to college and living in a Barsati, okay, 10 by 10 square feet with my dad and my grandmother. So my dream was a small apartment where I can see all four corners of my house. So therefore, my me buying a house even wasn't that much of a stretch. I didn't have to take a huge loan because I was able to keep my ambitions and my expectations in check. And then I made my effort to make that place the most beautiful place. I mean, you can see it, right? It's a so to me, lifestyle expansion is the root of
Mm.
people's sort of misery because they've committed to something and then they can't even enjoy it. If you buy a big house, but then you have to go to work every day, when are you going to
When
enjoy
are
all the
you
rooms in
enjoying
the
your
house?
house?
Yeah, when are you going to drive that car stuck in traffic where you can't even go beyond 20 kilometers an hour? I mean, what's the point? So I'm saying, and this is to impress people who you don't care really about. They
And
don't care about you.
care for you, who will
They
not
don't care
care
for you,
about your
right? So I'm saying
house.
to you, so therefore I feel luckily for me, I never got on that hamster wheel. I only worked for 2 jobs with 2 bosses that were amazing. So I never felt like I worked a day in my life. I've never worked long hours because I didn't feel like I have to accumulate a lot of money. So therefore, I've always lived a good life. I in the early years I spent as well. I had all the branded clothes and stuff because I wanted to own an Armani jacket. So I went and bought one $5,000 worth in like 2 minutes. Now I regret it because it's just hanging there. I've never worn it. It's like too old. I mean, it's just dowdy. I mean, it's like, what was I thinking? But Today, I'm at peace with a small apartment, basic cotton or not linen clothes, not even cotton because of climate change. So I feel like there's certain values that you have to get to. You have to know who you are. You have to know your center. Once you say, for me, it was at the height of my success. I was looking out the window overlooking Sydney Harbour and saying, is this it? Interestingly, I was doing a podcast interviewing someone who's very wealthy right now. And he was saying to me, is this it? And I felt like saying, it's not a function of wealth, dude. It's a function of maybe your age. It's midlife crisis. It's everyone goes through it. But my point though was that a function of wealth and age, whatever, you will get this feeling after you get somewhere, you climb to the top of the mountain, you enjoy it for about 5 minutes. And then you say, is this it? And there's been studies that show rich people around the world over the ages, over millennia, have had this feeling. I thought, let me short circuit that. Let me not even get there. Okay, let me just stay here only, because I know that whatever money I will make, I know I enjoy good music, which is free on Spotify. I enjoy a good book on a Kindle, which is 200 rupees per book. And I enjoy my small apartment. Okay, these are the three things I enjoy.
And travel.
And travel, but travel also. I don't enjoy 5-star hotels. I actually can't live in an AC. I hate 5-star hotels. I want smaller places. And more recently, I've cultivated friends where I ask them, hey, can I come and stay at your place? And vice versa, please come and stay at my place. I have places here. You come and stay at my place. Let me come and stay at your place, because I will get to know you better. I'm willing to sleep on a couch while I'm traveling. I've never needed to, but my point is that travel without the bells and whistles that people take for granted. I don't want that. So I'm quite happy to not backpack, but I don't want my own room and bathroom if I'm paying for it. But what I'm saying is it's very low key.
Moderate lifestyle in all aspects.
Yeah. So coming back to how was I able to quit my life? When my bosses changed, okay, when my boss was wonderful, I loved working. The minute that my boss changed and it became a hard thing, it's like, you know what, I'm not going to enjoy this. That's when I quit. And yet I will say, if I find a wonderful person again, I will happily take a job again. So I don't have an issue. I don't have this mindset, it's a job versus not job. It's what I'm doing and who with I'm doing. That's, to me, is very important. And I'm saying to you, I have enough money to do dal chawal for the rest of my life, this life, okay, in India. But if you ask me to live in Australia or Singapore, I will have to earn a little bit more. But I have enough money in the bank to give me the time to find the best consulting job, to choose what project I do and who with I do it. So I'm saying that you need to accumulate enough to give you option, the space, the mind space to choose your projects. You will have to work. I think it's unhealthy for people wanting to retire. They only start working at 25 and they want to retire at 40. Okay, so you only want to have a working lifespan of 15 years and live a retired life for 60 years. I'm sorry, that's not possible unless you earn amazingly well. That's not possible. So let's not even aim for that. The people who start the FIRE movement, financial independence, retire early, which is kind of what I am doing. Remember, we cut our lifestyle costs down. Okay, I cut it down. I don't know whether you might be as comfortable as I am. I drive a 16-year-old beaten up Swift. Okay, and I'm not embarrassed by it. Yesterday, I went to a very fancy restaurant and I was happy giving it to the valet. I don't give a shit what a valet thinks of my car, right? So you have to be comfortable with yourself. Only if you do that, I'm not saying, obviously you have to adjust it for your whatever. You decide what is the absolute minimum you're willing to tolerate. Multiply that for the next 30 years, put that money in the bank or invest it. Then you have these choices to say, take on projects that you like. Then you can say, okay, I can write a book or whatever else you want to do. Today I'm about to go and start making documentaries, which was my lifelong dream to do that. So yeah, I can do that because I have enough money to say no to many other things.
Beautiful. I think we've come back to where we started from, which is that money is just not about numbers, but there's so much art and creativity and philosophy actually linked to it. And I understand it. I think it's been beautiful speaking with you. Thank you so much for your time. And the Money Hans has all of this wealth of information. I encourage everybody to go check it out, get financially literate, and enjoy all the wise things that you have to share with the world.
Great. Thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me. I had fun doing this. And yeah, I hope, I wish financial independence for everyone, or at least financial happiness. May you not worry about money is the best thing I can hope for after this.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.